here we are again. Thank you so much for continuing to come back, and we promise that we're going to make this better and better every single time. And one of the things we're excited about today is having a guest on with us, and today we have Derrick Christy.
Yeah,
Aaron?
It'll be fun to get to know you on this episode.
Yeah.
I agree. Likewise.
Derrick Christy, Aaron Christy, no relation. Actually, just kidding, complete relation. They are brothers.
No, I'm excited. This is my big brother. I should say older brother.
Yeah, big brother's fine. Yeah. Leave the older out.
Yeah. So this is my brother. So I've been excited to. We've actually just been kind of doing us and whatnot. So we're excited to have you on as a guest and dig through your brain, because you have a different experience than we do on the type of things that you work with every single day. So that'll be fun. So
yeah, and this isn't about a family relationship, although that's cool, and I'm sure we'll probably share some stories and have some laughs here in our time together. But really, Derrick is a great entrepreneur and leads several businesses, and so we're gonna dig into some of those things and have some fun, and then of course we'll talk about some play hard stuff too. So
that's good.
Yeah.
I'm ready to get into it if you guys are ready to get into it.
Yeah, why don't we have Derrick give some of his background for the viewers that may or may not know him, and just kind of explain a little bit about himself.
Yeah, so if we could start when you're about 2.5 years old and go from there up.
Work forward there.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, here a native Hoosier, so from Indiana, and all my companies are in Indiana, but grew up on the south side of Indianapolis, married my high school sweetheart, had 2 children, and have 2 grandkids now. I have several companies in real estate, education, finance, and technology. So that's kind of the businesses we're in, and all located on the south side. But we do business in some other states too, 4 other states.
I could have said the older brother thing, because you just said you had grandkids. So I mean,
now it's okay.
Yeah, now it's okay to say older brother again.
It does seem like that can be allowed now. Yeah. So,
So primarily, I think where you spend most of your time during the day is at your mortgage company. Which how long have you had that?
30 years. So it's been
30 years in the business. That's right. We celebrated your 30-year anniversary last year.
That's right. But then you do a lot of different things from there as well. One is, and I've talked about it on the show, the family business that I worked at, the educational publishing company. You own that, and then real estate.
Yeah.
A lot of different things. So it'll be fun, because I think we have some topics that we can get into that will give a lot of good, valuable information. You can bring value to that. So
yeah, I love talking about kind of the diversification of the businesses that you're in, but you do it with great intent. And you and I have had conversations about this, but one of the things that I talk about quite a bit, and that we now talk about here, is the phrase that focus equals growth. And whatever you focus on in life or in business, you tend to get more of. Now, that can be kind of contradictory when you think about having multiple businesses, and as we do as well. And so I kind of wanted to get into that right off the bat. So yeah, we're talking about a mortgage company, an educational publishing company, and an insurance company, and those sorts of things. So when you set that up and kind of started growing into different areas, why did you start doing that? Let's start there.
I'm paranoid.
Okay.
So I'm a paranoid entrepreneur. So I didn't grow up, with a lot of money, not with a silver spoon. And when we were first married, my wife and I, things were pretty tough. Like I remember going back, like we had like $15 for groceries a week, and Huggies were $7.99 plus tax.
Yeah,
those are diapers. So those of you that don't have kids, so we started it was really tough, and so as a result, it made me a saver, and it made me a little bit paranoid. So I got in the mortgage business, and I did well. Probably it was a time when interest rates came down. And so
for yourself right away, or just you kind of got into the I'll try to break into the mortgage industry.
Yeah, I was in a couple of other small businesses before.
Okay.
But then when I really got into, I always liked financial services, so I like finance and investments, and so when I got into the mortgage, I did really well, but I still wasn't I wasn't even though I'd made more money than I'd ever made, I wasn't just completely comfortable, with that position in life. So I think I was always looking for another investment, or another income stream, in case interest rates would go back up and things would slow down. So I was always kind of looking around the corner, if you will. And I tried to create opportunities where there was synergy between the other companies. I can talk about how that happened. So
yeah, and that's the part that I think is interesting, because that's actually in just being completely honest with you, that's something that challenged me differently than in the mindset that I grew up in, of like focus equals growth, keep things narrow, stay in a specific lane and grow that to big, which I think that works, and I think that's key. But the strategy that you employed of saying, you know what, and this is what we talked about, I remember last year sometime you said, well, I was paying these other companies to do these things, and I thought, why don't I just pay myself or pay another company and then get customers that I know have the same need. I think that was really intelligent, and now that's kind of what we're employing too.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that was it. That actually kind of reminds me. That's kind of how that's a lot of how it happened. So I did work for about 6 years, I would say, in just that focus. So I got some stability where I was successful in the mortgage business. And then I thought, okay, I'm paying somebody else, I'm paying rent. So I want to buy my own building. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the first step into real estate. And so I bought my own building where I was not the sole tenant. We had a few other tenants there, but I was then paying rent to the landlord, who was now me,
right?
Another company,
and so was other people,
and so were other people. Yeah. And then, and so along after that came the opportunity of saying, hey, we're paying other vendors, and so if I pay enough to these vendors, maybe I could start out and be profitable out of the gate, or near profitable. And so that's what kind of happened. And so we would start businesses, and like the insurance agency, we knew we had enough flow that we would, probably not lose a bunch of money, that we would at least be at break even, and then allow us to, grow and be successful from there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like that's one of, there's one of two major things that I've got from you. And that's one of them, is like using the business that you have to feed other business instead of paying somebody else to do them, which is like what you said, we're currently we're doing, no, not kind of, we are doing as well.
Yeah.
The second one, and more important one, is he told me about a chili sleep, which has changed my life.
About a what?
There's, we were on vacation or something, and he told me, I was like, man, I'm so hot. Like, it's always, I hate sleeping hot, but I run really warm. And there's a pad that's called a chili sleep, and it goes on the bed, and then you can crank it down 0, and literally there's water that runs through it, and then
you can pick the temperature that you're comfortable at.
Cools. So of course I put it on the coldest possible one.
Time out. Are we getting paid for that? Like, did you just like have an awesome segue into like a vendor thing?
Right. Yeah. No,
we did it, but that was hilarious.
No, but
and this thing sounds spectacular, by the way.
It changed my life.
It's called Chili Pad.
Okay.
Mine's the Chili Sleep. I may have got a different brand.
Okay.
Yeah. But it changed my life, because like my wife is freezing all the time. I think most people's wives are, so she's got 2 blankets on the bed. One of them's like thick and fuzzy, and then like the other one's like a down one right on top of it. So I'm like on top of those, just dying every night. And he told me about this thing, and I'm like, ooh, I can cover up now because my back is freezing. So anyway, I was just kind of joking around. But
so those are the two most important life lessons.
That's what he took from it. So I mean, that's it.
Hey,
I thought I was dropping morsel nuggets all the time, and that's it. Yeah.
No, that's cool, man. And that's one of the things, this just seriously with the chili pad, that was cool. But like, we're literally doing the exact same thing now. And that's something that I picked up from you, is like, why pay somebody else to do the things that you can do for yourself if you are bringing in enough business to support one of these things, and then grow and then make profit off of other people.
Now, I think, profit's always important, right? Because that's why a business is built, because you got to make profit in order to stay in business, and not, that's capitalism. But also you could affect the service too. So I think there's 2 beneficial factors, is that, yes, you can build a business, you can create value in that other company, but I think you can create value for, your team members as well as for your clients in affecting the service. Maybe you could do it just a little bit better because you have a huge vested interest.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
You're the client, for this vendor. So, I mean, so it's motivating to affect the service that, then is building more value for your client base.
How do you balance your time with all of the businesses?
That's probably the hardest thing, but I mean, the answer has to be the people. I mean, you have to hire the right people. You have to hire people that are skilled. The longer you're in business, the more successful you are. You can afford to pay a little bit more. You can hire better talent. They're continuing to grow, mature in that business. You've got some maybe resources and education and training for them. So that, I mean, sometimes, to be quite honest, it takes time unless you just like start up and start with a bunch of seed capital and hire the best out of the gate. But if you're a organic, homegrown business like we were, it takes time.
One of the things that we talk about quite a bit within our business and on this podcast is culture and the importance of it. So people is one of the most important components of a culture.
Yeah.
What kind of culture do you strive for within your businesses?
Yeah, culture is so important. And I think ours, I mean, we tend to be kind of entrepreneurial, probably because usually there's some reflection of the owner in the company and with the culture. And so I think, we look for opportunities, and I think people are probably, kind of entrepreneurial, free-spirited in the company. And so, we definitely, talk about culture all the time in the company, and, continually working on that. You're never done.
No, absolutely not. So
yeah, one of the things that I like walking around your office and I even mentioned the 30-year anniversary party that you had, but you stay pretty committed to having engagements outside of kind of the norm. An ice cream social last year and different things like that also as reward. And then also not even as reward, but just because sometimes it's the right thing to do in bringing your team together. And so I appreciate that you do that with your team members as well. And I think it's a critical component.
You want to create some fun. You don't want work to be, you don't want to have a place where, you're just always, pushing people to produce more.
Right.
So you want to recognize people, and sometimes through those kind of events, you can do that, and let people let their hair down and have fun. And you want we talk a lot about lifestyle. We want a healthy lifestyle for people, and that lifestyle might be, we want them to have a rewarding family life. We don't work in so much that then their family sacrifices. And so, the balance, sometimes tough. There's certain seasons that are really busy. We realize that, but we try to help our staff have, financial wellness, their health and wellness, their family wellness, their career wellness. So we try to look at the whole lifestyle.
So critical. So critical just because, you think about a person that obviously works at an entity, whether it's here or anywhere, and that person is just that as a person. People always talk about like having work-life balance and everything, and I've mentioned it in the past. Like, I don't necessarily believe in work-life balance because that is to say that they have to be separate. I think work-life integration is something that's important, and I'm not saying that from a standpoint of you must take work home, and not that at all. But what I mean is, typically you don't have someone that's a complete rock star in the office, and then at home they're just a jerk to their spouse, they're mean to their kids, and just terrible. And then vice versa, the same way. You don't have someone that's just, oh man, they're a great father, they're a great husband or wife or spouse or significant other or whatever, but man, at work they're terrible. Those things go hand in hand, and so I think when a company does what you're talking about in taking care of the whole individual, not just the employee, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, holistic, like you almost said it. Yeah, so it's like it's a holistic thing. You're approaching life.
I agree with that completely. So let's go on here a little bit, and
we could roll into. So you bought your first building. Mm-hmm. You want to roll into some real estate questions?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So 1998.
So you went pretty hard to the hoop on real estate now. Like, you own quite a few strip centers, a lot of different properties, renovating a church in downtown Franklin into an event center, I believe, and rental space.
I actually read an article about you in research for this, and I know that you're a pretty humble person, so I won't talk most about what I read. People can go Google you and read that for themselves. Sure. But yeah, you have especially specifically within Johnson County and on the south side of Indianapolis, like you're
got a nice portfolio.
Yeah, a nice portfolio.
Yeah.
I think so.
And so, like, how do you get from your first building to go, hey, I really like owning properties, there's great tax benefits, or like, what was the driving force behind that?
I think some of it is Yeah, I think for some people that are self-employed, a little bit of it's control, right? If I'm really honest, you're like, you know what, like I don't like those bushes. I'm going to tear those out and plant new. You know what I mean? So it gives you more control.
Yeah.
You know, owning your own building. I want to tear that wall down. I want to do this. So I think a little bit owning your own company because you like the control. Real estate, I think sometimes can be the same way. Like you call the shots. You have created this real estate space that works for you, and you know it's an investment again. So I think in doing that, I think it's challenging. A lot of people want to own real estate. I always warn people, you know, commercial has more zeros than residential. So it might be a good idea to start out with a house or something to get, you know, kind of get your feet wet and kind of understand the mechanics of real estate. I did own one home, you know, thinking back, I did have one rental house before I did buy that office building. I haven't really been a big residential owner. We've owned beachfront condos and things like that for ourselves. And we rented out some previous ones, but we're pretty much, like you said, we went after commercial real estate and initially office, and then it was we bought a $22 million package that mainly was that got me into retail back in when was it, 2006, I think, and so that's when I kind of got into retail from just the office.
So that was been right before some serious economic issues in 08.
2008
bubble. Yeah, we probably bought right, but it doesn't mean that you know it still wasn't. It was still very difficult, very challenging. I mean, you just couldn't lease space in 2008, 9, 10. It was really, really hard to lease space. It was because of that financial distress. Right. You know, a lot of companies weren't opening new space, and so that made leasing tough. So you had to get creative. So sometimes you're given, you know, back then when we're like most of the retail centers 100% leased now. So I don't even have a space to lease if I wanted to. I'd have to build something, or like in Franklin, we're renovating, redeveloping something for space. But then, you know, you might have to offer free rent, or maybe I'll do some of your build out, or, you know, I'll cut your grass or wash your car, you know, whatever it took to lease space. So, yeah.
When you were in that moment, was your goal just to then essentially break even, or were you still trying to make money, or because it was so tough? So, you know, you talked about doing, you know, tenant improvements and things along those lines. Was that like, all right, let me just get the space occupied and at least cover the mortgage and utilities kind of thing, or what was your strategy at that time? Do you remember?
I remember. So, you know, it would go on kind of growing up. So thinking back, you know, so I didn't grow up with a lot. So I've always tried to really keep my expenses low. Mm-hmm. And so that helped back then. I took a lot of risk when I was really young, sometimes even before I was married. And then when we were newly married, and the most important rule of business, 3 rules: don't lose money, don't lose money, and don't lose money.
Yeah.
So, you know, the key is if you got your life structured right, where you don't have a lot of overhead, then it's okay not to make money for a while. So you've got enough, you know,
for a while
and all, but you don't want to lose money. Mm-hmm. So that's the riskiest thing, is if you're in a situation where you're losing money. So you have to avert that at all cost.
Was that Robert Kiyosaki that was talking about alligators by getting?
Oh, maybe.
But yeah, the alligators, when you buy a property and you buy it wrong, and it just eats all of your money up.
Oh, yeah.
Because you got to put it in there.
I always say the cake is already baked. You can't unbake the cake. So, I mean, you got to live with, you know, then you can't undo it. So
what do you look for in a property, either commercial or residential, when you're buying it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the other 3 rules: location.
I was gonna say I knew the real estate 3 rules of importance: location.
Yeah, so location's always key. Obviously, you want it to be in a good, you know, neighborhood, or at least a up and coming community. And so location's key. Visibility's another one. You know, we look for, and especially we're talking about commercial. So if it's commercial, you know, it's got to be where it's visible. You got to have good access. So is it accessible from a stoplight? Is it easy to get in and out? Can you only make, you know, a right out or a right in? You know, can you turn left? I mean, all those things, you know, come into play when people are choosing space. You have to lease successfully. The other is orientation, which kind of goes into that visibility again. You know, is it parallel to the road where all the businesses are going to be visible to the cars passing by, or some perpendicular that kind of lose, you know, some of that visibility? And I've owned properties at all different, I've been, great properties front and center. Sometimes there's single tenant, properties like a bank. I own a bank building, a couple bank buildings, and then retail centers where you've got multiple tenants there. Some of that is the location, even within the retail center.
Let me ask
can be
you this.
desirable or not.
On a retail center, let's say they were both priced right. Would you rather buy a center that had maybe lost its anchor and you'd have to rebuild, or would it be better to have one that's fully rented out?
That's kind of a trick question.
I was going to say my gut would say the one that's fully rented out, but to hear you say even that's a trick question, I'm intrigued.
Because I think so. If the anchor is not there anymore, that can be really scary. Because why did the anchor leave? Because a lot of times anchor tenants, they're stable tenants because they're a big tenant.
Just for everybody listening, the anchor tenant is like if you had a strip center and Walmart was in it, or Target, or
and then a Chinese restaurant.
Exactly.
So I would say in that case, that would be one you got to really be suspect. That's kind of death. When
so
you
what
lose
if it's
that anchor tenant?
But
it makes total sense. So think about over here, for example, Thompson and Emerson here in Indianapolis. There is
Kmart or something.
Yeah, the Kmart. The anchor left because they went bankrupt.
Yeah.
But that building's been, or that section of the building sat empty since Kmart went out of business. Like it's not been.
And that's a problem because today, now even the market shifted where because of online retail, there's not big box retail anymore. So when that anchor goes out, even worse today, because before you're like, oh, I'll just backfill that space, no problem. It's a problem today.
Yeah. That's a building with a lot of square feet where even if you were to subdivide the building itself to make more storefronts, it goes so deep, you're going to miss out.
You nailed it. That's the problem with the big box retail like that. The configuration is the problem. Mm-hmm. Now it's too deep and all the space isn't usable. So now you're only maybe leasing a portion of the space or some janky, entrance in the back of the building or something that you're not getting full market rent for. So yeah, those are all the things you have to think about in commercial retail. Other things to think about is what's your tenant mix. So, who are in there? Do they play nice together? Do they play off of each other? I think foot traffic is something that's always valued
as far as their businesses, not
their
personally.
businesses, not personally. Hopefully they get along personally too. But usually it's not really a personal type relationship. But restaurants are good because it creates lots of foot traffic.
Right. So let's say that they play well together.
Yeah.
From a business standpoint, so you've got a, I don't know.
Womp, womp, womp.
Yeah, no, I was trying to think.
I don't have the button, so I'll have to do it with my mouth. But you have a restaurant.
Well, I'm even thinking like if they play off of each other, and then one of them goes out of business to the point where that impacts the other one because we were getting business because they were getting business. Right. So is that a bad thing then if they play well or?
Yeah. So sometimes that can happen where one business is becoming a little bit dependent upon, the other because of the traffic. So that can happen.
So maybe
they go away.
Maybe it's like an Anytime Fitness right next to a GNC nutrition store. That's what I mean, right? So now the gym goes away, GNC's going to be like, this isn't as great of a location as we once had.
Yeah.
That's what I was going for.
And it can attract.
Took me a minute to get there.
That makes sense.
No, that's true. That's a good point.
So on the real estate, and we hear it, I'm just getting more into commercial real estate on my side. So I don't know a lot of these answers yet. I have an accountant for it, but I'm sure that you know it. Like what are the tax benefits of real estate? Because everybody's like, you don't pay tax on real estate. This is the way to go. So
this is why I brought my pen and paper today. I normally don't.
Yeah. So you have to be, so my disclaimer is you should go talk to an accountant or something.
Blink that at the bottom of the screen. This is not.
This is not financial advice.
Exactly.
I am not giving financial advice, no legal advice today. So, but no, seriously, you should, when you're in business, you should have a good CPA. You should have a good attorney. So definitely. But as far as the tax benefits that I see is depreciation. Now, you have to sometimes have a status of being a full-time real estate investor. Mm-hmm. So if somebody is a business professional and they're spending all their time in this business, they're an insurance salesman, I don't know. So they're an insurance. Well, then if they buy a piece of real estate, I don't can't give you all the details right now of the tax code, but I mean, it may be a situation where they can't fully depreciate, all of it like somebody that's full-time real estate. So that's something to look at, but it definitely does throw off depreciation. In bigger properties, it's called cost segregation. So you can even accelerate the amount of depreciation in that first year that you buy it. But those have to be probably larger properties, $5 million, $10 million plus properties that you can take advantage of those cost segregation. Everybody always loved to, there was one guy that was president that, he was in the real estate business, and everybody said, well, why does he not have to pay taxes? It's because of the way the tax code's written.
Yeah.
So they're doing larger properties. They're taking advantage of cost segregation. So they're building a building and they're taking a huge tax deduction that first year. Now, that may not be as significant in a rental home, but it still adds up. You buy that first rental home incrementally, that second rental home, you get to 10 rental homes, and now the income that you would be paying taxes on is getting depreciated off, is deducted from what you have as your gross income, your annual income.
So just to be fully clear here and dumb it down as much as possible, I'm working a job here and I'm W-2 paying taxes, and let's say we make $100,000 a year, and your tax liability is $30,000, right?
Yeah.
But you've been building up your portfolio of rental properties over here. You get a specific depreciation off of them each year, which then comes off of that 30. So now you may only owe 20, or
comes off of the 100.
It comes off the 100.
So let's say you had $100,000,
which makes it less deductible.
Well, so $100,000. Let's just simple.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of your taxes.
Okay.
Nobody argues that. So $100,000 worth of W-2 income.
Yeah.
And maybe then you're able to claim the $100,000 in depreciation from the other properties you own. So effectively, you potentially, depending on your situation, could owe zero taxes
Because you have zero taxable income.
Correct.
Good to know.
That's how it happens.
Yeah.
It's not a secret.
Write that down.
You can go to irs.gov. It's right there.
Yeah, right in the code.
That's always surprising to me about, people getting all bent out of shape about, well, so-and-so doesn't pay, didn't pay as much tax or whatever. It's not that they didn't fill out their forms and was just like, no. They played within the confines of the rules, and what's the old saying, hate the game, not the player.
Right. But I'll tell you, I've been doing this a long time. It's not that easy. You've got to really be, to your point, you've got to really be intentional about, you've got to keep buying property. And it's hard because as the longer you own the properties, residential or commercial, whatever kind of real estate, you start making money. And so when you make money, you've got to buy something else to create more depreciation in order to offset that. So you have to, it's not easy. It's not easy, but these people that are uber successful, billionaires that, they've got a tax team available, they've got accountants, attorneys, and they're it's a strategy every year. They're figuring out, hey, you need to buy $100 million worth of real estate this year to create enough cost segregation, accelerated depreciation in order to offset your income.
Yeah.
So they're literally buying things or spending money specifically to get the best tax situation that they could possibly
get. You buy a jet and write it off everything immediately, because you made too much money or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So that actually leads well into the next question that I was going to ask you in as far as your strategy and how you approach. So is it, I say simply, understanding it's not simple, but playing within the confines of that, and that's what you're basing your strategy on in your real estate investments, or are you kind of committed to I want to buy one property a year for the next several years, and then how are you approaching this?
It's changed at different times because sometimes my service businesses demanded more time, so I kind of took a break, from acquisition and buying more real estate, and then some years, I kind of accelerated and bought multiple properties. So it just kind of depended on what was going on. And a little bit now you get to choose in life, like, do I want to work that hard, this year? Buying real estate, buying a home's pretty easy, I would say. It's pretty easy. Buying commercial real estate, I talked about so many different things to consider. And so they take longer to close. There's more landmines there, probably with commercial. And so
it was borderline exhausting working on this building.
Oh, yeah. It can take, you can work grueling every day for 3 months to close a commercial deal. Understand, you're really buying rental contracts. These are
Right.
lease contracts.
Right.
So you better read those lease contracts because there's little gotchas in there sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, there could be a lease termination option the tenant has. You want to know about that.
Yeah.
You want to vet that stuff out. So yeah, there could
That's
be
your
all
job.
kinds of things. Yeah, that's your
That is our attorney's job.
Yeah, that's
in
Mark's
which,
job. You're right.
I gave it a first pass and was like, okay, and then no, let's pay somebody that actually read every word instead of every other word.
Yeah,
Just
that does that. That does that every day. You know, that's
Yeah.
their craft. That's their profession. They know what to look for. So that's why I said a little bit ago, you want to get a good CPA and a good attorney. You know, somebody you can trust. I actually ended up hiring my attorney. He's on staff.
Yeah.
Because he was doing so much work. And same thing. I looked at, hey, how much am I paying him? And
Yep.
I said, you know, I talked to him and he said, well, I'll come aboard. So it was great.
No, that's best case scenario there.
Yeah.
I don't think our guy's going to do that.
Mark, are you watching this?
Please.
He's just got. He's just going to tell you. You just got to have enough billable hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. What other kind of investments are you making besides real estate?
You know, we've done. We have bought. Like I said, we mainly have commercial real estate, and that's been our focus in both retail and office space. A little bit of development ground, and then some of the beachfront property. I have kind of studied the market, Southwest Florida, Southeast Florida, and so we recently this year bought, I say it's a new year already. So we recently bought a condo.
And you had a perfectly timed transaction of selling in Western Florida and buying in Eastern Florida.
We did right before the hurricane, like a month before. We didn't know. Obviously, no way to know. I wasn't tracking weather and patterns, but we did end up selling 2 condos there. We had for our family, so they were side by side, and those we rented out. So we would rent those out, and people would stay there maybe a week, 2 weeks, a month at a time. So we rented those out probably since 2005. So it was quite a while, 17 years or so. And then we ended up buying another one for our family, our larger place in Southeast Florida, in Hollywood.
I think Aaron told me that a lot of the homes around those condos were completely wiped out, but was the building that you're...
Because it was a steel structure and concrete, so it was good. But the buildings that were built low to the ground, where the tidal surge came, it wiped all the houses out, and they weren't built with steel and concrete piers. And so, most of the residential homes that were built around the 1940s and 50s weren't at the same hurricane standards of today, and so they were just gone. And in fact, that helped me with I had one buyer back out, and they said, the windows aren't hurricane. The slider's hurricane. This is kind of a funny story. So they backed out, and I didn't think too much about it because we had been through maybe 3 hurricanes owning this. Like nothing ever happened to our property. I mean, they're not hurricane standard. Now I don't know if the windows were actually blown out after we sold, and the next buyer that did end up closing on it. I don't know if the windows were there, but the funny part is the hurricane standard slider that was there. It was the whole frame. Everything was gone.
Oh my
From
gosh.
the tidal surge. So the wind didn't blow out the window maybe, but the tidal surge took out the entire slider.
Man, that's incredible.
But I will say, like our building now was built in 2009 in Southeast Florida, and it'll sustain hurricane winds of like 200 miles an hour, flying objects, and so but anything can happen. But
that's one of those units you can like scream from the top of your lungs and.
The Ace Ventura deal.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Right, exactly.
So the hurricane standards, the newer the building is, the better it can withstand that kind of a storm surge.
Yeah.
Well, they improve on the building codes every 3 years they come out with a new
one of
compliance book. So
one of the things I love to do to help myself fall asleep sometimes when I'm having a moment of insomnia is to just cruise around on Zillow, and of course I'll look for properties around here just to see if something jumps off the page, and but then I inevitably always look on the coastline of Florida. Up the East Coast a little bit too.
Can I comment on that real quick about you perusing on Zillow? The one thing that I think does get people where they could make a big mistake, so it makes me think about it for people watching, is if you go, wow, I found it. This is a good deal. That seems really cheap. There's always
reason.
a reason why. So if you go like, oh, I bought that because it's not a good location, doesn't have good vibes, but I got a really good price on it, that probably just isn't going to work out long. You're not going to have this fantastic appreciation with the result of that property, even though maybe price per foot, oh man, it was the deal,
Right.
But not really in the end.
Yeah, you definitely, that goes back to making those like educated decisions on the properties you're going to buy, whether it's residential or commercial.
Yeah, there was a property that we were looking at before we bought this building here, and we had Derrick look at it and whatnot. And I believe you were the one that told me we were looking at it. He's like, this is in a floodplain.
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, that.
It seemed
I want to
cheap.
say it was embarrassing, but it wasn't really embarrassing because obviously you do this a lot and you were guiding us and all that kind of stuff. And what did you look at that document for like 2 minutes and you were like, it's in a floodplain.
Right.
Like tried to hand it back.
Don't need to see the rest of it.
But no, looking at Zillow, like in the Fort Myers area and everything, it's just one big red bubble. Everything is for sale there right now.
Yeah.
And then you can still click on the pictures and just the decimation of what that hurricane did with the storm surge and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty incredible.
Well, and people think like, okay, so there's going to be all these great deals there. Not
No.
necessarily, because now the land is now whatever the land was worth before the hurricane, it's worth so much more now because everybody knows that everybody's going to rebuild and
Yep.
that the price per foot is going up. So all the land just got more valuable. So it costs more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I know. I was like, man, this is literally just land.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
You had somebody that maybe they had a building, maybe that was older, it was built in the 60s or something. And with that home and the land, now just the land is worth what the improved home and the land used to be.
Yeah.
Because, again, everything's going to be, it'll never look the same. I mean, it will never look like what Fort Myers Beach used to look like because it was, that older style
Old
construction.
town family
And that's
style.
probably
Yeah.
gone forever. And so, it becomes a little bit
They do
more
high
interesting.
rises in Fort Myers Beach, right? I know a lot of those areas like you can't go beyond 4 stories or whatever, which is nice, I think. But
Yeah. We unless you're the developer, and I tried that, and they told me no. But yeah, they talking about density. So their whole thing is when you're on an island, it's 7 acres long. I know a lot about Fort Myers Beach, so it's 7 acres long, and you can only get so many cars on there without a traffic jam. So what they don't want is they don't want you creating a bigger building, increasing the density. Because then now you're like, oh, you and your family come, and now you have 2 cars instead of 1. And now you double the traffic on the island, creating
Right.
a problem, people getting on and off. So that's why they limit you on how
makes
much
sense.
square footage, how many more units you can put on there.
yeah.
You guys missed that. You guys were having a nice conversation. I took a drink of my water. And the people that are listening, not watching, would have never caught this. But the people that are watching,
Did you spill it?
I got splashback.
Oh,
when I
look at it
dropped
all over you.
It shot up into my face and then down my shirt.
Hey, you know what? If we're honest,
And I'm over
we've
here
all
wiping
been
my
there.
face off,
Yeah.
and you guys are just talking about property density, and I'm like,
It happens.
Yeah. Anyway, I just
It
figured
happens.
I'd
But
point
we
that out.
should definitely talk more about homes, though, a little bit, because we talked a lot about commercial real estate. And
Before we move on to that, let me ask one last question on kind of, well, I guess the homes would be investment too. But the question that I was going to ask
real
is there anything that you, from an investment perspective, whether it's real estate or just other investments, that you just absolutely stay away from? I'm not doing that. I'm not touching that.
Well, one thing is I think you have to be careful about buying property if you don't know anything about it. As an example, I want to study first before I buy warehouse space or flex space because I don't own any. So if I want to buy that, then I better do my homework, or I better partner up with somebody that's owned flex space or warehouse space for a while, because each different type of asset class has just a different nuance.
Yeah.
So I think that's where you can get hurt. Like, oh, I know retail, or I know office, or I know multifamily, but then you go out and buy some warehouse space. You go, well, it's a lot cheaper per square foot, and the rent's a lot cheaper per square foot than the other asset classes too. So if you don't know that, you could really get hurt.
Yeah.
So know your property, know your investment. Don't go in blind. Research it. Talk to somebody that knows, and get the lowdown. Maybe
Exactly.
even have them look over the property.
Yep.
I think that's a hard part for everyone. I'm a believer in confidence. I think certain things taking them, a measure of confidence, and that's huge. But you got to be careful to not let your confidence turn into arrogance and think that you know everything. Get help.
Oh yeah.
Get help.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't know everything. I mean, there's too
many subjects. Yeah.
And then nuances within the,
You know what I hate worse than asking for help?
taxes.
Taxes. And losing money.
yeah.
Which taxes is losing money?
Taxes. Yeah.
Losing money. There's a good book that's written, and the premise of the book is who, not how. So who, not how. So that kind of goes along with that. Like, hey, if somebody's a subject matter expert, you need to talk to them, because if you're trying to figure out how to do it, sometimes that's like pushing a boulder uphill. That's tough. Whereas if you just ask somebody that knows how, it's all about the who.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what they say. Like when you have somebody that, let's use roofing for an example. You come out and you're like, oh, hey, I have a leak. And you go out there and you fix it, and it takes 15 minutes. And then you give them the bill for $500, and they go, oh, it took you 15 minutes. Well, you're paying me for my knowledge, not the time spent out here. Same concept and everything else. Like there's people that have amassed a lot of knowledge in specific areas that you could study and learn. It may take you years to come to the same conclusion that they can have in 30 minutes.
I read this awesome thing the other day. That it went on for a little while, but just to try to paraphrase it right in line with that was, when a friend asks you to help something because they know you know how to build a deck, I think is what this was. But you give them the quote and they're like, oh, it shouldn't take that much. And this guy, I don't know if this is true or not. If it is, it's awesome. If it's just a story, it's still cool.
It's a story where he goes and buys the materials.
Well, yeah, and he's like, well, how much do you think it should cost? Well, it should. I think the quote was just call it $5,000. He's like, oh, it should only cost $2,000 or something like that. And so he's like, all right, well, I'll tell you what, I'll help you with it. And then he goes to the materials, and then next thing you know, he's like, all right, now you're gonna need to cut these boards. You have a saw? Well, no. Can I use yours? Well, I had to go buy the saw, so let me charge you a rental for that. And then
how are you gonna get the wood home when you don't have a pickup truck?
Exactly.
Nails.
Yeah.
It's a great analogy.
Story.
Yeah, no, it's really cool.
And he's like, by the time they add everything up at the end, the story, he was like, well, that's $3,800, then I still got to do it.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm just going to pay you to do it.
You got to take time off of work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
So
honestly, it made me more careful of what I ask other people for. Like even just myself, I don't ask for a lot of favors, but in that regard, like you got to be respectful of other people.
Yeah, let's hop into the residential space. So I guess, what do you want to talk about in residential? You got what are your tips for there? What's best practices?
Yeah. So residential real estate is where a lot of people are going to start. So that's why I said we kind of jumped right into
heavy duty commercial.
Yeah, we did. So
buy a $5 million building.
Yeah, so I wouldn't do that. And if you were going to do that, if somebody says, "Well, I have a lot of money, I want to invest," be an investor and go on with somebody that's experienced, and then that way you kind of take the ride, but you get somebody that's a good operator. So and I've done that. I've got investors, and they do that with me, and they get a piece of the action, but they don't have to run it on a day to day.
So so as an investor, I want to buy a residential property that I'm going to rent out. You own a mortgage company, so this is a perfect question.
Yeah.
Is it 30% down that you have to have because it is a rental property?
Yeah. So when you're going to buy your primary residence, you can put 3%, 5%. You can put a minimal amount down. You could go in and put 10, 20%. Obviously, it's up to you, but you got to have the minimum down. Now, commercial, when you're looking at a rental house, an investment property for a home, there you're putting somewhere between 20 to 25% down. You can
20 to 25.
You can put more. You can put 30% down, but minimum you're going to put 20 to 25% down, whereas minimum on a primary residence would only be 3 or 5%.
Gotcha. Okay, so you want to save up enough to get in the price range of house that you want to have as an investment property.
Correct.
So plan on having at least 20-25% for the down payment. And then if you want to do improvements, you want to have that in the bank ready to go before you make the decision to pull the trigger on property of that.
Yeah, so if you're fixing up the kitchen or you're wanting to do some improvements, you got to consider, well, hey, I if the kitchen's destroyed, you go, man, I wouldn't lease that property. You better make some improvements.
Right.
So yeah, you got to make sure you've got the finances aligned. Make sure that you've got the cash to be able to get that done. And some homes could be turnkey, so it just could be merely you're buying that home for investment. It doesn't need a bunch of work.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, looking at a a residential investment property, I'm a dollars and cents thinker. And so, my mind would be at, all right, what do I think I'm going to be able to get from a renter on a rent, and can I make a profit on it?
Right.
And so what kind of profit margin do you look for, or do you think should be sought after in a residential investment property?
Yeah, so I'm looking at that. I wouldn't do something unless I can get a double-digit cash-on-cash return. So I'm looking at 10% plus cash-on-cash return. Sometimes it just won't pencil.
Right.
It won't work out. Now,
and I think that's where a lot of people get in trouble, is like, well, I'll get it going, and maybe you overspend on the property,
right?
And
they don't consider, hey, there's going to be maintenance items.
Taxes.
You're the landlord. They don't own it, so
right.
Somebody's got to do the maintenance. If there's something on the outside, they're going to have to fix. The landlord's going to have to fix it. So that starts to eat into what you thought was going to be your cash flow. But yeah, so we talk about cash on cash return. We look at investments. Now, when I say cash on cash return, okay, my rent is $1,200 and all the expenses are $1,000. So that's going to be $200 per month. So that's $2,400 per year. So if you've got to calculate $2,400 divided by whatever you put into the property total, and there's your cash on cash return. But wait, there's more. So now you've got maybe a mortgage where you're paying principal and interest. So then there's also what I refer to as cumulative return. So that's that free cash flow you got, that cash on cash, that $2,400 a year plus, let's just say there's another $2,000 a year in principal you're paying into the mortgage. So effectively, that's another $2,000 worth of equity on top of the $2,400. So that's $4,400 a year is your cumulative return. And I look at both the cash on cash as well as a cumulative return on investment.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it is a funny story that you said that earlier. You said you got to watch out because there's things that come up. I bought a investment property December of 21, and the week I bought it, we found out that a tree had grown up and the root went through the sewer pipe, which was made of clay, and then backfilled the basement with waste.
Oh.
So I had $10,000, I think, in fixing the pipe. And that's not even like reseeding.
It was literally month one. I don't even know if it was a week,
yeah.
but it was definitely month one.
All I have to say about that is that really stinks.
Dun.
Yeah. So yeah. Definitely watch out for those things. Actually, it's funny. We closed on this building the 5th. So earlier this month, and then I walked in. I went on vacation. I came back. I walked in to the bathroom, and there is a out of order sign on the urinal, and I'm like, the first week we buy it, things start breaking.
It was ridiculous.
What's the deal? Mm-hmm. So yeah,
it's kind of like when you pay off your car.
Yeah. As soon as the warranty ends, the dishwasher stops working.
Exactly.
The other thing you had said too, when you say, well, I'm going to rent it for such and such amount. Now there's all kinds of great tools. You can go to, I don't know, there's all kinds of rental sites, right? Maybe it's probably rent.com or something. You can go to apartment.com. You can go different places and you can say, hey, what do homes in this
kind of
area,
like a rental comp.
Well, yeah, before you would be wrong. You'd be like, I think it's going to rent for $1,200 a month. Well, guess what? It's going to rent for $1,000. But now you can actually go out and find rental comps just the way an appraiser is going to go out and find sale comps and give you an appraisal value, an assessment of value.
That's
Which
good.
Doesn't mean, any doesn't mean you're going to rent it for $1,200 a month. The market speaks. An appraiser, just because he appraises it at X amount of dollars, doesn't mean you're going to sell it at that. But at least it gives you an educated guess.
Comps in the area.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to. You definitely want to be looking at that appraisal, make sure that the value supported what you're buying, investing in the property as a purchase price. And then you also want to look at the rental that's coming in, make sure that the area is going to support that, because you're like, oh, in this improved neighborhood over here, this much better neighborhood compared to this crime-ridden neighborhood,
right?
They're getting $1,200 a month. Well, that's why you're not going to get it in this neighborhood.
And especially like in the Indianapolis area, that can be block to block.
It can be
major swings. There's an area of Fountain Square, for example, that is doing very, very well right now. And you go one street over, and it's, you're like, whoa, what country am I in? Anymore. And so knowing that is very important.
Yeah, but if you can catch it on those uptick booms, though, like obviously nobody's gonna crystal ball, but like you start seeing like on certain streets where people are buying it up. But like my wife's cousin, I believe, had a house there, and then they had bought it there before, like, or right when it was starting, and then it really kicked in down in Fountain Square.
Yeah.
And I think somebody offered them like double what they paid the previous year.
I got to tell you, so I've never had that happen to me. So
I wouldn't either.
So I mean, you know, the thing is, I think that's where you have to. Everybody always hears those stories like, "Oh, I'm going to hit the jackpot," you know,
Right.
but I think you got to buy on fundamentals.
And that's the whole point. Excuse me, of investment is it's a methodical. In my opinion, anyways, it should be a
Yes.
methodical approach. Yes, you might get lucky, but plan on not.
Right.
It's the same thing we're talking about in our business with this year and how we're approaching our goals and not looking for a storm and all that kind of stuff. If we do and we get lucky, cool. But we got to build our pipelines based on that there's not. And it's the same way when it comes to investing.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, owning real estate for 30 years, I haven't gotten lucky yet. I mean, I have because it's just, you know, generally appreciated over time.
Right.
But that situation where I bought it and a year later it's worth double has never happened to me.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing too. I'm not a big seller. So some people.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. So I've pretty much bought, and I've owned my company for 30 years. I've owned real estate for decades. And so it's work to buy it. It's work to sell it. So it's like, well, if I'm going to work to buy it, I'm going to work to sell it, then I got to go buy something else. So why would I go to work again? You know, so
what's
for
your
me,
long-term play then? What are you going to do?
So the thing is, you know, like just recently, you know, my business partner, he wanted to sell and I wanted to buy. So I cash out of the property, and then I bought him out. Or I could cash out equity, and then I could go buy another property. I've done that too. So by not selling, you know, it keeps throwing off cash flow, and I didn't sell it, so I don't owe any tax.
Okay.
Because if I sell it, then I got to pay capital gains tax.
Right.
So I don't want to sell because I don't want to pay the capital gains tax. I just want to continue to own it, you know, long term, and then it doesn't become taxable if you don't sell it.
Now, you can pay capital gains tax unless you find another property that you want to buy within a specific time, and then you can do a 1031 exchange.
Yes,
right?
exactly. There's a forward 1031 and the reverse 1031. So yeah. But we in fact, MVP Title just put on, they put on a
Seminar.
a lunch and learn, a seminar.
Yeah.
And so they had talked about that and had a lot of people don't understand 1031. So they had a lot of people come to that.
Do you have a quick overview of it for the people listening?
Yeah. Essentially you're taking one commercial property
And it's for commercial only, not residential, right?
Yeah. It's for something that is for commercial, you know, so it could be an Airbnb, it could be a home that you're renting out, but it's not for your personal use. It's not a second home. Mm-hmm. So it's something you're renting out. So there's got to be some kind of commercial use to it where you're receiving rents or something. And so you're trading. It's basically a trade. And so if you trade quick enough, you have to identify it very quickly. I think it's 45 days, and then you've got to close within like 6 months. Again, consult the 1031 exchange intermediary and your accountant.
You've got to identify the property and name it within 45 days.
That's right.
But if you find it before you sell,
can name 3, actually.
That's probably the